So now we will continue discussing Anarta Nivritti, and Nishta also we will discuss. So there's some questions here left over from the earlier session. How does one go from serving God with awe and reverence and for duty's sake to serving God with love and devotion? The beauty of the process is this, that pure love and devotion is already there within you. It's not something artificial that it's imposed upon the living being. He already has pure love of God within him. So simply by following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, one becomes naturally purified, and the original dormant love of God within the heart gradually becomes manifested. Just like on the eastern horizon, that sun gradually comes up, the sunrise gradually manifests. In a similar way, if one follows the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then that pure love of God, that spontaneous loving attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead will gradually become manifested. Just as you progress from Sraddha to Prema, is there any possibility of going backwards? Of course, one can fall back. That's how we got here. We originally situated in pure Krishna Prema, but we fell down even lower than Sraddha to simply faithlessness, ashraddha, because we misused our independence. And we came here trying to be an imitation God. In the Bhagavad Gita verse, when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. My question is, where does memory reside? Is it part of the mind or the intelligence? Where does the mind physically reside? Is it in the cerebral lump in the brain? The mind is subtle, so where it actually resides, it's not physical. So it doesn't need a physical residence. If we understand the mind is a covering, mind, intelligence, and false ego are three subtle coverings. Just like this material body is a gross covering, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, constituting the subtle body, are also covering. Yes, they are covering. The subtle body covers the spirit soul, and the gross body also covers the spirit soul. Just like on your body, you're wearing, your body is there, your underwear and your outerwear, they're there. So the gross body is like the outerwear, the subtle body is like the underwear, and the body itself is like the self. So from that standpoint, the mind would be situated, be a covering around the Atma. So the idea that the mind is in the brain is not really correct, because when somebody leaves as an out-of-the-body experience, they're separated from their physical brain, but yet their mind is active. So the mind and the intelligence are not situated in the physical body, they're subtle elements. So there's no more questions about Anarta Nivritti? Of course, these were general questions. Any other questions about Anarta Nivritti? More questions, okay. Hare Krishna, Srila Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all Vaishnavas. How should two devotees deal with their differences in a marriage? They have to make Krishna the center of that marriage. Marriage is not for enjoyment, marriage is for purification. If we take it as some enjoyment facility, that means I'm making myself the center instead of making God the center. We are not the enjoyers. God is the only enjoyer. If I take myself as the center of that enjoyment, of that relationship, in other words, I'm thinking it's for my enjoyment, then there's bound to be conflict. If you throw 2 rocks in a pond, each rock will emanate a circle of waves coming from itself. There'll be a circle of ripples coming out from each rock. So those 2 series of ripples will eventually conflict with each other. But if I throw my rock in the same place that you throw your rock, then there is no conflict. So the easy conception for a happy marriage is you have to execute your marriage for the pleasure of Krishna, not for your pleasure. That means there's no question of divorce, first of all. That principle should be established. This will not break, this is a lifetime commitment. Divorce is not Vedic. Divorce is a product of the Kali Yuga. There's no question of divorce in a Krishna conscious marriage. It doesn't exist. So the first principle to understand then, this marriage, we have to make it work somehow or other. And that somehow or other is by making Krishna the center. I'm not the center of this marriage, you're not the center of this marriage, Krishna is the center of this marriage. And both of us have to work together to please Krishna in this relationship. That will make the marriage perfect. Questions more?
Srila Gurudev, if a person is in the Anarta Nivritti stage and he takes up additional responsibilities like becoming a husband or a father, then does he take those additional karmas as well in that stage, or how does it work in that case?
Does he get karma, you say?
When a child commits something up to a certain age, the parents are bound to get karma. So if a person is in the Anarta Nivritti stage, does it add to his karma, or how does it work in that situation?
Can't quite understand. You're saying that the parents get the karma of the children?
Yes. And they are initiated, and do they still suffer that karmas, or the Anarta Nivritti?
Oh, if the parents get initiated?
Yes, they are initiated,
and their children are off doing nonsense?
Yes, then in that case...
Like I know one devotee, his son became a criminal, was put in the prison. So does the father get reactions for that? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Well, if the father is a devotee of Krishna, he's taken shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, he's done everything in his power with all sincerity to help that person become Krishna conscious, then he's not bound up in the reactions of what they may do, which is not Krishna conscious. He's not bound up. Because Krishna has released him from all kinds of karmic reactions by dint of the fact that he has surrendered to Krishna. However, one who is not surrendered to Krishna, yes, he is bound up in those karmic reactions. That's a fact. So the moral of the story is surrender to Krishna. That's the moral of the story, and then you're covered. Otherwise, karma chakra is very, very entangling, very, very entangling. What is the difference between Anarta Nivritti and Anarta Pravritti? I've never seen this term before, Anarta Pravritti. There are the terms Nivritti Marg and Pravritti Marg. There's that difference I can explain. But Anarta Pravritti and Anarta Nivritti, no. The path of Pravritti Marg is the path of increasing sense enjoyment, and Nivritti Marg is the path of reducing sense enjoyment. There are both paths contained in the Vedas. Those who want to gratify their senses are instructed how to do it the Vedic way. That's just like the demigod worship is there for those who want to gratify their senses. But that path is not recommended for those who want to become actually free from all suffering conditions. For those who want to be free from suffering conditions, the pathway of Nivritti Marg is recommended, decreasing sense enjoyment. Lord Chaitanya was conversing with Sankarshan, and he explained that even within the Quran there was two paths of Nivritti Marg and Pravritti Marg. The general tendency within Islam is to follow the Pravritti Marg Islam, where you have all facility for sense enjoyment. But Lord Chaitanya was aware that there's actually the Nivritti Marg path within Islam. And he was telling Sankarshan about the difference. Sankarshan was inspired by Lord Chaitanya and gave up his harassment of the Sankirtan movement, and he joined the Sankirtan movement. Any other questions? Yes?
A spiritual master who is serving Krishna and is fully surrendered, why does he suffer the reactions of his disciple? Because you said a person who is surrendered doesn't suffer anything. But in the earlier class you mentioned that spiritual master takes some of the reactions of his disciple.
Yes. The spiritual master does this, the one who surrenders to Krishna is free from. Well, there's a difference between accepting a disciple. That's a different thing. If I'm a father in this material world, I have children who I raised before I became a devotee, for example. And when I surrender to Krishna, there's the reactions coming from their whatever nonsense that they do, because I raised them and I brought them into this world, so I get reactions from what they do, which is not in accordance with religious principles. But if I surrender to Krishna, then Krishna frees me from that. The spiritual master is in a different situation. He has accepted disciples for the sake of delivering them back to Godhead. They've come to him for the purpose. They've come to him as an act of surrender to Krishna and Guru for the purpose of going back to Godhead. The ultimate absorber of that karma is Krishna himself. However, because it is transmitted through the via medium of the spiritual master, he sometimes experiences reactions. But ultimately that karma is absorbed by Krishna himself. So it's a difference. He's accepted them as the disciples for the purpose of delivering them back to home, back to Godhead. So that's different than someone who had children in the material world. It's quite a different situation. Is that clear? Okay. Any other questions? No more questions? All right, we'll take a look here. This is a very nice book. It's part of, some of the purports are from Prabhupada, and some are by the followers of Prabhupada because he didn't complete it. But we'll read from one of Prabhupada's purports here. We read part of it yesterday, up to the point of Bhajana Kriya, and now we will continue reading. First of all about Anarta Nivritti, and then we will go into Nishta. This is on page 6 of the Sri Narada Bhakti Sutra. The next stage is called Anarta Nivritti, in which all the misgivings of material life are vanquished. A person gradually reaches this stage by regularly performing the primary principles of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master. There are many bad habits we acquire in the association of material contamination, chief of which are illicit sexual relationships, eating animal food, indulging in intoxication, and gambling. The first thing the expert spiritual master does when he engages his disciples in regulated devotional service is to instruct him to abstain from these 4 principles of sinful life. Since God is supremely pure, one cannot rise to the highest perfectional stage of love of God without being purified. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.2, when Arjuna accepted Krishna as the Supreme Lord, he said, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. You are the purest of the pure. The Lord is the purest, and thus anyone who wants to serve the Supreme Lord must also be pure. Unless a person is pure, he can neither understand what the personality of Godhead is, nor engage in his service in love. For devotional service, as stated before, begins from the point of self-realization, when all misgivings of materialistic life are vanquished. So as we were explaining earlier, it's a matter of replacing the old bad habits with new good habits. Now Prabhupada talks about Nishta. He says, after following the regulated principles and purifying the material senses, one attains the stage of Nishta, firm faith in the Lord. Now notice, this is again faith. Same word, faith, but now we have firm faith. Sraddha is also defined as faith, but this time there's a difference. This is firm faith. In other words, that faith was not as firm as this faith. There's a difference. That is preliminary faith, but now we have an advanced level of faith, which is very, very solid, Nishta. Firm faith in the Lord. When a person has attained this stage, no one can deviate him from the conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one can persuade him that God is impersonal without a form, or that any form created by imagination can be accepted as God. Those who espouse these more or less nonsensical conceptions of the Supreme Lord cannot dissuade him from firm faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna stresses in many verses that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But despite Lord Krishna's stressing this point, many so-called scholars and commentators still deny the personal conception of the Lord. One famous scholar wrote in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita that one does not have to surrender to Lord Krishna or even accept him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but that one should rather surrender to the Supreme within Krishna. Such fools do not know that what is without and what is within. They comment on the Bhagavad Gita according to their own whims. Such persons cannot be elevated to the highest stage of love of Godhead. They may be scholarly, and they may be elevated in other departments of knowledge, but they are not even neophytes in the process of attaining the highest stage of perfection, love of Godhead. Nishta implies that one should accept the words of Bhagavad Gita, the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as they are, without any deviation or nonsensical commentary. This is a common phrase we used to have in ISKCON, fixed up devotee. Prabhupada introduced that term. So this is what it means to come to the Nishta stage. You're actually solidly fixed now in Krishna consciousness. as we read in the Madhurya Kadambani, that on the stage of Bhajana Kriya there's so many disturbances. But again and again one's mind is deviated from Krishna consciousness. But now you've come to a mature stage. By undergoing the Anarta Nivritti, by purifying your consciousness of this dirt accumulated for thousands and millions of years, now you're in a fixed state. You're very solid. You're not shaky or flaky anymore. Now you're a very solid position. That's called Nishta. You're in a very firm position. So this is the result of becoming free of this dirt in the heart, this tendency for sense enjoyment, which kills us again and again and again and again and again. The wonderful, wonderful reward to come to this stage, the Nishta stage, is a great, great reward. When one is in a very, very fixed position. So are there any questions? Here comes one. How should we strike a balance between engaging in devotional service and study of scripture? It's interesting in this connection, Srila Prabhupada said that one should always be engaged in doing service and always be engaged in studying scripture. So you should do both constantly. You may say, well, how's that possible? I could always be studying and always being doing devotional service. Well, it's a very simple thing. The devotional service is the laboratory section of the course, and studying is the lecture section of the course. So you should hear very nicely and study very nicely when you do your readings, so that you can always see things through the eyes of the scripture. This way you're doing service, you're also studying how this process works. You're studying, you're seeing what you read in the scriptures, now you're actually applying it, and you're judging by the result of what you're getting from doing that activity. Just like a student in the chemistry course, he hears in the lecture H2O equals water. So then he goes to the laboratory, he actually does that. He takes 2 parts of hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, and he gets water. So is he studying in the laboratory? Yes, he is. He's applying that theoretical knowledge he got in the lecture. And he's saying, this is real, it works. So a devotee who's fixed, who's solidly fixed in Krishna consciousness, he studies the scripture, and then he puts it into action. He sees how this knowledge works. If he only studies it theoretically and he doesn't put it into practice, it is only jnana, or theoretical knowledge. But once he actually takes that knowledge, he actually puts it into practice, then that jnana becomes vigyan. A true Brahman not only has jnana, but he has vigyan. Shamadamastapaucho cham shantirarjamameva cha jnanam vigyanam astakyam. Note that verse, Bhagavad Gita 18:42, that not only does he have jnana, but he has vigyan as well. He not only has the concept, but he also has put that concept into practice. And he's experienced the result firsthand by his own actions. So that we should study very much, we should become very knowledgeable in the scriptures. And at the same time, the most important thing is to put that knowledge into practice. I remember one godbrother, he's now a sannyasi, he was a householder at the time, but he visited our temple years and years ago in Gainesville. This was Kavi Chandra Maharaj now. And he was giving the class, we asked him to give class that day, and he mentioned at one point I think it was outside of the class he told us, but he said, the best way to study for giving the class is to chant good rounds. Instead of, saying, well, I'm going to give a class on, this verse today. Let me get out the verse. I'll study it. Think about all the different things I could say. He was saying, he said, the best way to prepare is chant good rounds. Because now you're applying the philosophy, you see. If you're actually putting the philosophy into practice, you'll have unlimited things to say. Have unlimited things to say. Just like if I had in the material world, if I was told, okay, you go to this place, go Govinda Valley, and you're going to have about 8 hours of talking to do, I would wonder, how could I possibly talk for 8 hours? I mean, it's not possible. What could I say for 8 hours? Because I'm practicing Krishna consciousness. On a daily basis, I'm trying my best to put it into practice. So there's unlimited things to say, because I'm experiencing, in fact, even as I'm speaking, I'm realizing new things about Krishna consciousness. So study is not only when you're reading the books. If you have what I mean to say, a shastric eye, you're seeing through the eyes of scripture, shastra chaksus. If you have a shastric vision of seeing everything through the eyes of the scripture, then you'll be studying, not only when you read the books, but while you're engaged in practical activities, you'll be studying, how does this work? How does this process pan out in the realm of practical action? And you'll be quite impressed, actually, the way it pans out in the field of practical action. So the balance is always be studying and always be engaged in doing service. And that's the balance. When you're doing service, you should be seeing it from the shastric viewpoint. Are they equally important, or is there one more important than the other? Well, Prabhupada definitely didn't want us to not stop doing service in the name of studying. That's a fact. I one time wrote him about this. Because we were so busy, I was traveling with Vishnu Jana Swami on what was called the Road Show. It was a traveling rock opera about a boy who became a devotee. A history hippie became a devotee. Prabhupada actually came to see our performance, and he liked it very much. So, this process is a very practical process. Very, very practical process. We were very much engaged in every minute. The leaders of our party had us constantly engaged. We were doing rehearsals for the rock opera, and then we'd go out and go out on Sankirtan, and we just constantly engaged. I said, where's the time to read? Where's the time to study? So I wrote Prabhupada a letter. I said, Srila Prabhupada, I don't have enough time to study. I'd like to have more time to study. Prabhupada had a very potent answer. He told me that actually, he said, you have study without practice, then this knowledge will become dry and useless. And I've seen it practically. In our Austin Center, one young man came, and he purchased a set of Bhagavatams. He was so enlivened studying the Bhagavatam. So happy studying the Bhagavatam. And then we told him, you should also chant japa. He said, no, I don't want to chant. I just want to study. And about halfway through the Bhagavatam, he lost his enthusiasm to study, even though he was so fired up, you see. Unless you put this knowledge into practice, It may be interesting for a while, but after a while it loses its luster. Because this knowledge has to be applied. You see, it has to be applied. So the most important thing is to put the knowledge into practice. Because then you become very realized. Even if you don't know so many verses, if you sincerely put this knowledge into practice, with full sincerity of attitude, then Krishna will give you so much guidance to how to understand perfectly this philosophy. We see that fixed devotees sometimes fall down. Well, I think we should say fixed in quotes, quote, fixed, so-called fixed devotees. Someone who's actually fixed will never fall down. You see. They may appear to be fixed, but there's a difference between actually being fixed and appearing to be fixed. We see that fixed devotees sometimes fall down with anartas. Does this mean that they did not reach or surpass the anarta nivritti stage? Does that mean they did surpass it? No, obviously there was some anartas in their heart. They hadn't conquered yet. In the latter, how can one fall from Nishta Ruchi stage? Is it a glide down? Shouldn't it be easier? I was just reading here in this book, what did Prabhupada say about a Sakti stage? I was reading just this morning, Prabhupada was saying in any case, if someone is falling down, they really hadn't surpassed the Anarta Nivritti stage. That's the point. Once you get past the Anarta Nivritti, you're in a very solid position. Nishta means solid. Anarta Nivritti means you're still disturbed in your Krishna consciousness by this and that thing. But practically, after you get beyond Anarta Vritti, practically there's no disturbance anymore. There practically is no disturbance, hardly any disturbance at all. Very, very slight disturbances, which go away. Okay, any other questions? Let's see, there's one. Since it is possible to return to the Sraddha stage, does that mean in Nishta some anartas are still present? Well, of course it is, one can fall all the way from Prema, which did happen to all of us. If one misuses one's independence, one can fall all the way from Prema. That tendency to act independently is always present, and if one utilizes that tendency, or we could say misutilizes that tendency, then they can fall all the way down below Sraddha, with no faith at all in God. So it is, such things are there, they do happen. They happen to us through misuse of independence. But one who has realized the foolishness of his mistake of having left the spiritual sky and is now taking up this pathway to rectify himself, those persons, they will not make the same mistake twice. So if someone falls down, does it mean the anartas are still present? That means if anarta is still present, they haven't completely surpassed the Anarta Nivritti stage, obviously. It means they're coming into Nishta, but they haven't completely got out of Anarta Nivritti yet. If Anartas is still present, then they're not purely in Nishta yet. That means that you could be 90% in Nishta. It's like a transition, transitioning from Anarta Nivritti to Nishta. They could be 90% Nishta and 10% the Anartas. You see, as your Anarta Nivritti gradually, as your Anartas gradually diminish, then you're becoming more and more, even in the very beginning, you have a little bit of fixity, you see. You have a slight little touch of Nishta, and mostly Anartas. But as those Namartas go away, then the Nishta becomes more solid, more solid, more solid. And then when all the Anartas go on, then you're 100% solid. Does that make sense? You understand? Okay. Next one. When not in association with devotees, how to motivate in devotional service, how to motivate yourself in devotional service. Well, if you're driving a cab, for example, and you're driving around all these mundane people who have no interest in Krishna consciousness, how do you stay motivated to be Krishna conscious driving your cab, or going to the university, or whatever you may be, working your job? How do you stay motivated? You have to have vision. You have to have the vision of what is the real situation. You have to see that everyone in this material world is here because they misused their independence, and now they're getting an opportunity to rectify their position and go back to Krishna, but at the present moment, they're completely missing the opportunity. You have to see the whole world through the eyes of Prabhupada's books. You have to. You have to. Unless you have that vision of seeing everything through the eyes of the scriptures, you're going to be carried away. I guarantee you, you will be carried away. You will be affected by the people. Their attitudes will rub off on you. You have to see everything through the eyes of the scriptures. And then instead of being affected by them, you will have an effect upon them. That's the difference. Instead of being affected by them, by being weak in your own vision of reality, if your vision is strong, if you have complete conviction in the truths contained in these books of Srila Prabhupada, then instead of being affected by them, you will affect them. And that's what we have to do. If we want to be able to maintain our Krishna consciousness, we have to be the leaders. We have to establish Krishna consciousness wherever we are, by our words, by our thoughts, and by our example. Why does Krishna create demons like Kamsa, Jarasandha, Keshi? Well, Prabhupada explains that actually, of course, the demons, that means they have their own free will. Krishna doesn't make somebody, okay, I want to have so many demons, so I'll make these demons. No. Demon means one who misused his independence and became rebellious against the Lord. It's not that God wants somebody to be some demon, so he creates demons. No. God wants everyone to be devotee. But that devotion has to be voluntary. Otherwise, it's not devotion, it's just a machine. Just like some people buy a mechanical dog. You can buy a mechanical dog now, But can the dog love you? No, it's just a machine. A real dog, you can pat him on the head, you can, lick your feet or whatever. They like to lick the nose, actually. Lick your face. Maharaj, if someone cannot fall crossing Nishta, sometimes it does happen. That's a fact. How did Maharaj fall from the Bhava stage? Sometimes it does happen. Generally, Prabhupada Prabhupada, I've read what Prabhupada says, from these higher stages there is no fall down, but yet it does happen sometimes. So the question would be, well, then when Prabhupada says it doesn't happen, then what does he mean? He means it generally doesn't happen? Or does it mean that Bharat Maharaj's bhava stage was not pure bhava, it was a mixture? That's an interesting question. Okay, I'm confused about what anartas are. Could you please explain? Okay, lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, envy. There's some anartas right there. Desire to be worshipped. Desire for, acquire so many material goods. Material desires. Those are anarta. Okay, let's see what else we got here. How do we know we're in the Nishta stage? Well, as we read in the Madhurya Kadambini, in that stage there's hardly any interruptions for your Krishna. You hardly ever find any interruption along your Krishna consciousness. It's very, very rare, very, very slight interruptions. If you're finding that your Krishna consciousness is going through all kinds of upheavals on a regular daily basis, you're definitely not at Nishta. Nishta is a very advanced position that your heart is free of all these material desires. Prabhupada said that he could be in a room full of naked women and not be agitated. So we have to see, well, if I was in a room of naked women, what would I be thinking about? Then you can know if you're on the Nishta stage or not. Yeah, we shouldn't try to puff ourselves up. The best thing is to always, just take the humble position about yourself. And what is my position? The best thing is just to be very humble and remember what Lord Chaitanya said. He said that I have no love for Krishna, because if I had any love for Krishna, I would immediately give up my body in his separation. I wouldn't be able to tolerate being separated from Krishna. I would immediately die. The fact that I'm still maintaining body and soul together proves I have no love for Krishna whatsoever. So if you want to know how to position yourself, the best thing is just take a very humble position. Don't try to think, well, I'm on this Nishta, or I got Ruchi, or maybe I'm up on a Sak. No. The best thing is just to think, I was actually studying for this seminar, and I was amazed at all these descriptions, and I was going, wow, where am I at? And I was just thinking, I just started thinking, I'm reading all these descriptions, I was simply feeling, I'm simply a despicable rascal. That's what I concluded by studying all these wonderful exalted states of consciousness I was studying. So actually, the more we can, that's how we become advanced in Krishna consciousness. The more we can feel, I'm a despicable rascal. That's how we become strong. That's how we actually get free of the dirt. That's how we clear out the anartas. By becoming very, very humble, very, very meek and humble. Then the anartas will go away. As long as I am proud, I cannot get rid of the anartas. That's the thing. So if you proudly think you have a certain position, well, that's an anarta right there. It's an anarta. If you proudly think I have this position or that position, then it's an anarta. How much does visiting holy places of pilgrimage help us advance from Sraddha to Prema? It's very powerful. But even more powerful is to connect with the holy place within. The Lord Himself is present within your heart. And to act in such a way that is pleasing to Him, then you're always living in the holy place. To physically go to the holy place without actually entering in the mood of bhakti means you didn't really go there. So, I remember I had, somehow or other by Krishna's arrangement, I had to wait for, 7 years? I didn't go to the Holy Dham until 1980. I was initiated in 71, actually 9 years after I got initiated before I could go to the Holy Dham. And it was every year the devotees would come back and they would tell how wonderful it was, and it's like, oh, it was enlivening to hear about it, but then I was thinking, what about me? When will I get my chance to go to the Holy Dham? I mean, I couldn't believe it, year after year. Somehow the authorities wanted me to stay back and run, keep the temple going. Everybody else went. But I actually realized when I finally went, it was a great blessing because separation increases the hankering. It was so intense that last year before I went, they had me I was doing the puja for Gaura in our Houston temple. No, that was a different year. No, after I went, it was so intense. Even the first time I went, I got so much ecstasy. For the whole year, I was bathing Gaura and constantly begging them. Of course, they say you can ask some boon, so I was asking for a boon. I could go back to the Holy Dham. I was so inspired and enlivened by that first trip. All I could do for a whole year was meditate every day on going back again. For a whole year. I was bathing Gaura and every day I would bathe them and dress them very nicely and say, my dear Lord, please bless me if you so desire. I can go back to Mayapur next year for the festival. And I did, by their grace. So that separation, so many years I had to wait. When I finally went, it was the most powerful experience. I was completely overwhelmed by it. It was an amazing experience. The emotions I experienced were just unbelievable. I never experienced emotions like that in my whole life. I felt such a strong attachment to the Holy Dham. It was just like love at first sight, and it was amazing. So staying back from the Holy Dham was actually very good for me. Because every year that desire increased. That fire of desire, I have to go to the Dham. And finally when I went, it was unbelievable. It was like a mystical experience practically every minute. Such sweet spiritual emotions I was feeling in the Dham when I finally went. It's unbelievable. So, the way to go to the Dham is it's described, the spiritual master is the revealer of the Dham. So, you cannot go by purchasing ticket. A ticket, you saving money and buying a ticket will not give you the Holy Dham. But only by the mercy of Guru, who is the revealer of Dham, then you can actually enter the Dham. So that's how I enter when I go to the Holy Dham. I beg Srila Prabhupada, please bless me, my dear Srila Prabhupada, that I can actually enter into the Dham. And then as soon as I get out of the taxi cab, I immediately get down and offer my dandavats in the dirt. Because every single particle of the Vrindavan and Mayapur dust, it is more valuable than all the whole treasury of Kuvera, the treasure of the demigods. Mayapur and Vrindavan, they are non-different. There's no difference between Mayapur and Vrindavan. When you go to Mayapur and Vrindavan, it's the same thing. So one has to The mood should be one of complete humility, just begging the mercy of your spiritual master that you please, please bless me that I can actually enter into the Holy Dham. If one has that mood, then entering the Holy Dham will be the most amazing experience. Prabhupada actually honored that all the devotees should go for our festival in Mayapur. That used to have a big Gaur Purnima festival. Now it's still going on. Now it's going on again big time. And one devotee objected. He said, "But Srila Prabhupada, it costs so much money for the tickets." And Prabhupada said, "Your eating costs money, doesn't it?" So this is a devotee who was kind of big, a lot of prasadam. And he couldn't. Prabhupada's point was, the money is not really an object. You need to go to the Holy Dham. So it is recommended. If one is very advanced, though, then wherever he goes, he feels connected with the Holy Dham. He finds the Holy Dham within his heart. So someone like Srila Prabhupada, wherever he set his foot down on the face of this planet, that place was Vrindavan. Such devotees like Srila Prabhupada, they don't have to go to Vrindavan to purify themselves. They go to Vrindavan and purify Vrindavan of all the sins deposited there by the mundane pilgrims who come. Could you please explain how we can be humble and not be proud of it? This reminds me of that devotee who wrote Prabhupada a letter. He said, "Srila Prabhupada, I'm your most fallen disciple." Prabhupada said, "You're not the most anything. You're simply insignificant." So there's a tendency to think, I'm going to show how humble I am, Some devotees are right to say, I've seen devotees write correspondence that say, "In my humble opinion." But I was thinking it's more appropriate to say, "In my puffed up opinion." That's being more humble. You see. If I say, "Well, in my humble opinion," you're wrong. It's better to say, "In my puffed up opinion." Then you're being humble. You say, I want to advertise Of course, it depends on what you mean. You can't say humble. Please accept my humble obeisance. That means lowly. In that sense, you say, "My lowly obeisances." My not very significant, not very exalted obeisances. If you say "your humble servant," there's two ways you can mean it. You can mean, "Yes, I'm very humble." That's being proud. But if you think, "I'm very lowly and significant," if you mean it in that sense, then it's okay to say humble. Let's see. Krishna failed to keep his words many times, but he always sees that his devotees' words or promises will be fulfilled. Can we really take his word? Yes, you can trust his word. When it comes to giving knowledge, Krishna's words, the words in the Bhagavad Gita are fully trustworthy. Trust me. Krishna's words are fully trustworthy in the Bhagavad Gita. Now sometimes in other situations, Krishna was a little tricky. It's like with Nanda Maharaj. Krishna was preaching atheism to convince his father to worship Govardhan Hill. So Krishna is sometimes tricky, that's a fact. But when Krishna is speaking the Bhagavad Gita, he has nothing up his sleeve. It's straightforward, pure truth. Can you say there's no difference between Vrindavan and Maya? When you say, why some senior devotees want to leave the body in Vrindavan and Mayapur? Either way, if somebody has a feeling about wanting to leave in Vrindavan or in Mayapur, that's all right. Everyone has a certain taste. Some devotee may prefer Vrindavan, some may. That's all right. You can prefer to one over the other. There's no harm, but you should always remember they're actually non-different. As long as if you say they're different, that is wrong. But if you have, it's just like, say, well, they're actually like one Dham, but I like this part of the Dham as opposed to that part of the Dham. There's nothing wrong with having a preference. Just like even in Vrindavan, some people like to go to Jamuna, some people like to go to Govardhan. There's nothing wrong. Or just like in the temple room, someone may want to meditate on Krishna Balaram, someone may want to meditate on Radhasham Sundar, somebody may want to meditate on Prabhupada. So there's nothing wrong with having a certain inclination to meditate or worship in a certain way. There's nothing wrong with that. But if one says, Krishna and Balaram are God and Radhasham Sundar are idols, then he's off the track, or vice versa. To prefer Vrindavan over Mayapur or Mayapur over Vrindavan doesn't mean you're denying doesn't mean you're denying that they're the same. You understand my point? Doesn't mean you're denying they're the same. A devotee in the Nishta stage has left his body. What is his destination? Nishta does have some slight interruptions. So a Nishta devotee could take birth again if he happened to leave his body when his mind was interrupted. The chances are he probably went back to Godhead. But there's a slight chance he could have taken birth again. Because Nishta is not Prema. He's approaching Prema, but he's not there yet. So a Nishta Bhakta could actually take birth again, because Nishta is sometimes interrupted by the material energy. Very rarely, but sometimes it happens for a Nishta devotee. Okay, any other questions? All right, questions are coming. Very good. So is everybody feeling happy and enlivened now? Feeling fired up?
Yes.
Yes? I'm thinking, when can I go back to Sydney? When will this be over? I've sat through enough sessions now, it's time to go back to Sydney. Spiritual master is in the Prema stage, then only can his disciple can be able to progress from Shuddha Prema. Is this true? Generally the answer is yes. Because Prabhupada does explain like that. The spiritual master, you need to have a spiritual master who is experienced. If you want to achieve, but the spiritual, you go to the level of your spiritual master. So that is explained. But it is also explained that even if the spiritual master is not on the highest level, if he is purely representing the teaching coming from Krishna, then he can also act as a spiritual master in that capacity. So even if the spiritual master has not attained Krishna Prema, pure Krishna Prema, and he's on a lower level, if he is without any deviation, if he is giving you the pure teachings coming from the previous acharyas, their potency is acting through him. You see, it's like saying this, some gentleman has come to my door and he's brought a cashier's check for $1 billion. I just won the most amazing lottery, and it's a $1 billion cashier's check made out to me. So will you ask the gentleman, my dear sir, are you a billionaire? Will you ask the delivery man, are you a billionaire? Because if you're not a billionaire, I'm not going to take this check from you. Would you ask the DHL man? Are you a billionaire? You've delivered me a cashier's check for $1 billion, but if you're not a billionaire, I don't want it from you. If you're not a billionaire, I won't accept this $1 billion cashier's check from you. Would you do that, Madhusudana? Now, if a person, all you want to know is that it's a bona fide check, it's not going to bounce. Is it? That's all you want to know. So, whether the spiritual master has prema or he doesn't have prema, if what he's giving you is the genuine prema formula, then you should take it. You see. Now it's a fact that the higher the more potent the spiritual master, the more he is situated in love of Krishna. That's a fact. There's more potency there. There's no doubt about it. And Prabhupada does say that one should be careful to find a spiritual master who is an Uttama Adhikari. He says a Kanishta Adhikari can be a guru, a Majjhima Adhikari can be a guru, and an Uttama Adhikari can also be a guru. He does mention that a disciple should take care to find a spiritual master who is an Uttama Adhikari, otherwise he will suffer under insufficient guidance. That's stated right there in the Nectar of Instruction. So then what is the Uttama Adhikari definition? In some places the Uttama Adhikari will be defined as that person who has prema. In other places he's defined differently in the Shastra. In other places he's defined as a person who has firm faith in the Shastra, and also is very expert in logical arguments to defeat all opposing arguments. He's also defined as an Uttama Adhikari. So there are different definitions for Uttama Adhikari given in Prabhupada's books. And you can't say this one is valid and this one is not valid. You can't say that. They're all valid. So the real determining factor is to find a spiritual master who is presenting purely, who himself is following, strictly following without any deviation, the pathway of bhakti, and who is giving you the teachings exactly as they've come down in the parampara system. That's the real bottom line. Now whether he has prema or not, that's back to the example of the DHL man with the $1 billion cashier's check. Of course, Prabhupada said, well, he actually did. Then on the other hand, Prabhupada did give credit. He said, these boys and girls, they have love of Krishna. He said that about his disciples. Otherwise, they're not being paid to do this. They have love of Krishna. Otherwise, how they are doing all these activities? They're not getting paid to do. So that's also them. Prabhupada said his disciples are just like coal. No matter how much you wash them, they're still dirty. On the one hand, he said that. On the other hand, he said that they have love of God. Otherwise, how they're doing all these activities without any remuneration? Prabhupada even said, I'm not qualified. About himself, he said, I'm not qualified. My qualification is I am representing the qualified person. So if Prabhupada says about himself that he's not qualified, then what is our position? You see? Another place where it's described what are the qualifications for a bona fide spiritual master is the first verse of the Nectar Instruction. There it says that Vacha Vegam, Manasakrodha Vegam, Shiva Vegam, Udaropasta Vegam, Etan Vedanyo Vishaheta Dera, Sravam Apimam Prativim Shashishyad. One who can conquer mind, words, anger, tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So that's a very prominent verse. It's the opening verse of the Upadeshamrita by Rupa Goswami. It's a very prominent verse. It's the opening verse of a very important work on the science of bhakti. So we should take that as the guiding principle as to who is qualified to be a spiritual master and who is not. That should be the guiding principle. Prabhupada personally gave us that book for our studies. So we want to know who's qualified to be my spiritual master and who's not qualified to be my spiritual master. We simply have to see. Is he's always thinking of Krishna? He's always speaking of Krishna? He's always thinking of Krishna? He controls his tongue, he controls his belly, and he controls his genitals. And that's the criterion for who's qualified to be a spiritual master. If such a person is not already on the level of Prema, you'll very soon be on the level of Prema. Mayapur and Vrindavan are non-different, but yet isn't there a difference? In the sense that Mayapur doesn't take any offenses, whereas in Vrindavan offenses magnifies 1,000 times. Yes. So Mayapur is the more merciful Vrindavan, you can say. It's the more merciful part of Vrindavan. But there's a certain sweetness in Vrindavan. I mean, you really can't distinguish between them. But it's a fact that Mayapur is more merciful, there's no doubt, because Lord Chaitanya's presence there. And it's a fact, in Mayapur, there's no offenses. Even in Mayapur, if you're sleeping, if you just go there and sleep, that sleeping is accepted as obeisances. You make spiritual advancement just by sleeping in Mayapur. Mayapur is so merciful. But in Vrindavan, you got to be on your toes. Be very careful. If you go to Vrindavan and you're very careful not to commit offenses, you taste. Vrindavan is very, very sweet, very, very, very sweet. If you're careful, is always be respectful to everyone, and not lose your, not become offensive. Vrindavan is extremely sweet, and Lord Chaitanya went there and just melted in ecstasy. The other three Vaishnava Sampradayas don't talk much about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Prema. Is that right? Yes, that's right. What is the destination of the devotees in these Sampradayas? Vaikuntha. Any other question? We got about 5 minutes left. All right. All right, more questions coming forward now. Any questions coming from the ladies' side, or the ladies? No question. All right. If one can accept that Nishta Adhikari is a spiritual master, no, I don't advise that. Prabhupada says that one can do that, but one Nishta can be, but he advises not to accept such a person. Prabhupada directly advises not to accept a Kanishta or a Madhyam. Prabhupada directly says to take an Uttama. So then you ask, well, what does Prabhupada mean though when he says that they can become a guru? What does he mean? I don't know. Maybe he's talking about the bogus gurus. I don't know what he's talking about. But Kanishta is definitely a bogus, he'd be a bogus guru from our perspective. It's amazing that Prabhupada said a Kanishta can become a spiritual master. I mean, from our perspective, a Kanishta is a bogus spiritual master. Kanishta is a selfish person, he's greedy. If a Kanishta becomes a spiritual master, he's doing it because he wants the money, He wants the dakshina for his sense gratification. That would be the Kanishta move. So how Prabhupada says it's, these things require further realization to understand, and maybe even asking Prabhupada someday in Goloka, what did you mean, Prabhupada, when you wrote a Kanishta can become a spiritual master? Okay. Okay, Ekat Chandra Dham is more merciful than even Sri Dham, because Lord Chaitanya appeared. Wherever Lord Nityananda set foot, that place is the most merciful place. That's the thing. Lord Nityananda is more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. Therefore we pray, Ha Ha Prabhu Nityananda Prema Nanda Sukhi Kripa Balokana Koro Ami Bado Duki. My dear Lord Nityananda, I see that you are always swimming in an ocean of transcendental bliss. But my dear Lord, I am a most miserable, unhappy person. Please, please, my dear Lord Nityananda, cast your glance of mercy upon me so that I can also become ecstatic. That's a very nice prayer by Narottam. So there's no doubt about it. You can even if you're depressed, you can go to Lord Nityananda and say, I'm really depressed. Please show me some mercy so I can become blissful. When we want to go to Holy Dham, is it true we have to visit Mayapur first? No, you don't have to visit Mayapur first. It's not required. Although it's nice, because there are no offenses in Mayapur. So it allows you to become accustomed to being in the Holy Dham without having to worry about the offenses. So there is some advantages to doing that, especially when you're going for the first time. There's some real advantages to first going to Mayapur. Was Mirabai on the level of Prema as is properly portrayed, or as Sadhu Sangha, she didn't accept a bona fide spiritual master? I don't know. Prabhupada said she was a great devotee. He mentions her name in the Bhagavatam purports, and I don't know much more than that. How to behave in Radhakunda towards the Brahmins which stay there and come and ask for money, etc. They always come when you sit near Radhakund. I just tell them straight away, I'm not interested. As soon as they approach me, I say, no. I immediately say, no, I'm not interested. You leave me alone. I don't want to get into it with them, because it's just, I just tell them immediately, no, I'm not interested. No, 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 nahi, nahi, nahi. I just tell them right away as soon as they approach me, so they back off. They get the message and they back off. We don't want to be disrespectful, but we have to be strong so they don't take advantage of us. For those of you who don't know, they want to tell you about Radhakunda and this and that, and they want to do little rituals with Radhakunda, and they want you to pay them some big rupees. It's a money-making thing for them. Is there a relationship between Nam Aparad, Nam Vashuddha Nam, with the stages of Sraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, Anarta, Nivritti, Nishta, Bhava, and Prema? There obviously is some relationship. I don't know what it is. I can't say there's an exact correlation where you would draw the line. I don't know. But this can be researched. It'd be very interesting research. If somebody wants to go in and study in detail these different writings, it'd be very interesting to hear. I'd be very interested to hear from you what you find if you do research on it. There's obviously some connection, because Nam Aparad and then Shuddha Nam means you're becoming more purified. At the same time, Sraddha, Sangha, Sandha, Bhajana Kriya, Anarta, Nivritti, Nishta, Bhava, and Prema means becoming more purified. So there has to be some connection. And exactly how it connects, I don't know, but there is definitely a connection. Oh, very good. Thank you. tell us good about every religion. Any religion which helps one to develop love of God is first class. Whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Sikh, a Jain, a Jew, or a Buddhist, if by your activities in that system you're awakening pure love of God within your heart, then what you're doing is first class. We do not criticize anyone for their religious path, but we simply want to see that everyone comes to the point of pure love of God. If in the name of that pathway you're engaged in all nonsense, then that's not good. But through that pathway you're developing pure love for God, then that's very good. Define Krishna. Prabhupada one time defined Krishna, the word Krishna, greatest pleasure. So you can ask somebody, would you like to have the greatest pleasure? Would you like to have the greatest pleasure? My dear sir, would you like the greatest pleasure? Then the greatest pleasure is Krishna. What is the future of ISKCON according to the scriptures? Sajjana durjana pangu jadda anagana prema vanyaya dubaila jagatara jana. This Krishna consciousness movement is a prem tsunami, and it will inundate the entire universe, drowning everyone, whether they be lame, invalid, or blind. Who is replacing Prabhupada now? Prabhupada wanted each one of us. Of course, there is no replacement for Prabhupada ever. He is the founder acharya of this movement. That is a position that only Prabhupada will occupy. No one else will ever occupy the position of being the founder acharya of this movement. Prabhupada wrote the books which are the guiding principles for this movement, and that will never be changed. So nobody will ever replace Prabhupada. But we want that thousands and millions of people will purely represent Prabhupada. Prabhupada told us in Mayapur, he said that now we are 10,000, then we will grow to 100,000, then we will grow to 10 million, to 1 million, and then to 10 million. He said there will be no scarcity of acharyas. So Prabhupada wanted that every one of his followers should become a powerful acharya for establishing Krishna consciousness on this planet. So Prabhupada wants us to become fully empowered Prabhupada Nugas, not that we take Prabhupada's position as the founder acharya. But he wants us to become fully empowered representatives of himself and the previous acharya. The spirit souls have come from the super soul. That means there is a time of birth known. As I explained this morning, they eternally emanate, the atomic souls, the atomic jiva souls eternally emanate from the Supreme Soul. He has always been emanating them, he will always be emanating them because they are his emanations, therefore they depend on him for their existence. But it's never, because there was never a time he was not emanating them, they are eternally existing just as the Supreme Person is eternally existing. So our questions have run out, our time has also run out. All right, well, this is the last one then. Any more we can bring up at the next session. Is it necessary to approach Lord Shiva before entering the holy Dham? No, you don't have to. Lord Shiva actually is provides the security service for Vrindavan. There's a temple of Lord Shiva in Vrindavan. And when we sing the holy places of Vrindavan, Jaya Jaya Gopishvara, Jaya Jaya Gopishvara, Vrindavana Manj. In this way we glorify Lord Shiva when we sing the glories of the holy Dham. Because he is there as Gopishvara. He is a security guard at the Rasa Leela to keep all the nonsense out. So he's doing a great service in the holy Dham, and we don't have to ask his permission to enter. No. Simply our spiritual master, that is sufficient. If you don't have a spiritual master, you need one. Because the spiritual master is your key to actually enter the holy Dham.
When we start the Navdeep Nandal Parikrama in Mayapur, people are asked to ask permission of Kukeshwar Shiva, which is in Yoga Peak Temple, just behind the Yoga Peak Temple, in the same compound, there is a Yogeshwar Shiva.
And that'd be true in Mayapur, it's not true in Vrindavan. He is there at the birthsite of Lord Chaitanya. So when you go to that place, yes, he's the... Is he also, they say he's a security guard there at Lord Chaitanya's birthsite? Do they say that?
Yes, yes.
When you go there, you can go and beg Lord Shiva's mercy, yes, for entering the birthsite of Lord Chaitanya. But in Vrindavan, we have no such injunction. In Vrindavan, the real fact is the spiritual master is the revealer of the Dham. As long as you have your spiritual master's permission, then you're okay. Because all the great acharyas will honor that. Oh, this person has his Guru Maharaj's authorization into the Dham. All the acharyas will recognize that. You have your Guru Maharaj's blessing, then it's okay. Shiva will recognize. Everyone will recognize. If you have your spiritual master's blessings, you'll have no problem when you enter the Dham. That gives you full security clearance into the holy Dham. You have your Guru Maharaj's blessing. Yeah. Okay, so we'll look forward to the next session. We've gone through many steps now. We did Sraddha, we did the Sadhu Sangha, we did Bhajana Kriya, Anarta Nivritti, Nishta. Now, I think we just have one more session, don't we? For this topic? Yeah, one more session. You left Asakti off the list, so we actually have 4 we're going to roll into that one session. Asakti, Ruchi, Bhava, and Prema in one session, one grand session. We're going to study what the acharyas have said about these exalted states of consciousness. And look forward to that day when we can get there ourselves. Okay, we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Sankarshan Das Adhikari Maharaj ki jai.